Hello, my name is Rhianna and I currently live in Berlin. I teach English here in Berlin and I've been living here for about a year and a bit now. And recently I thought it would be a nice idea to do a bookstore tour of Berlin because although I've been to a few bookstores in Berlin before, there were still a few that I hadn't been to. And so yes, last weekend I decided to do this bookstore tour of Berlin and I found 7 different bookstores that I wanted to go to, and I curated a little walking tour so that I'd be able to go to all the bookstores. And in total the walk was about 1 hour and 20 minutes, and actually it was a really nice walk. It starts off at Unter den Linden, which is pretty much in the centre of Berlin. It's by the Brandenburg Gate and by Alexanderplatz, and then it goes north to Rosenthalerplatz and to Prenzlauer Berg and ends near Eberswalder Straße. And I think that's quite a nice walk through Berlin. You get to see quite a lot of nice different cafes and of course bookstores. And so yeah, today I thought I would go through the bookstores that I went to and also the books that I bought there. And so we started this bookstore tour at Unter den Linden, and from there we walked to Dussmann, and Dussmann is a really big bookstore and they have a lot of German books, but they also have this other section of the bookstore which is just English books, and they had so many nice things there. The bookstore, I think this is probably, if you're coming to Berlin, this is probably the best bookstore to go to in terms of size and in terms of books that are available to buy. And here are a few books that I found that I thought looked like good books. I thought How to Be a Brit was kind of a funny title. And there are also a few seating areas within the bookstore, like this sofa which is by the window, and I thought that is quite nice because you can choose a few books, read a few pages and kind of see what book you want to buy. Then from there we walked north, and the next bookstore was a place called Do You Read Me, and this was about a 20-minute walk from Dussmann, and we walked over the river Spree in Berlin, and we also stopped off at a bakery to get hot chocolate because I'll take any opportunity to have a hot chocolate. While we were walking, we also saw this building that I'd never seen before, and it was really nice. It had this really nice brown stone, and I think it's the post headquarters or something. I'm not 100% sure what this building is, but it was a nice building that we passed. Then we arrived at Do You Read Me, and this bookstore was more indie and had more alternative fiction compared to Dussmann, which had very popular fiction. I didn't recognise a lot of the titles that were in this bookstore, and it was also on this street that had a lot of art places, and so I think the books, a lot of them were kind of about art. I also found this book called 1 Ingredient Recipes, and I was like, how can you make a recipe from 1 ingredient? And yeah, I thought it was just a joke book. It had milk in it and said you can make milk from milk. So that was kind of funny. Then next we were back on our walking tour, and it was actually kind of not a nice day in Berlin in terms of the weather. It was very rainy and windy, but we powered through, and next we made it to Ocelot. And this was a really nice bookstore. It had a really good vibe inside and had a mixture of indie fiction and also popular fiction, had modern books and classic books, and it had a wide range of books to choose from. And it also had German books as well, so it had a mixture of English and German. And the bookstore was kind of a hybrid of a bookstore and a cafe. You could buy a drink and sit, and you could also browse the books. And I thought that was quite nice. Because yeah, you can drink and read, which is always a fun activity to do. They also had these books which were the last interviews with important figures in history, and I thought they looked like interesting books to read. And then the next bookstore we went to was called Hundt, Stein, and I really loved this bookstore. It was in kind of a basement, so you walk through the door, then you go down the steps, and as a consequence it had a really kind of story-like wholesome vibe. It felt like you were kind of going through a secret door into a secret bookstore, and that was really nice. And I actually bought 2 books from this bookstore, and the books are Journey to the Centre of the Earth by Jules Verne, and A Room of One's Own and 3 Guineas by Virginia Woolf. And I bought these because I've never read any Jules Verne before, and also my partner really likes this book, so I thought that would be a good book to read. And I got Virginia Woolf's book A Room of One's Own because I've heard a lot of good things about A Room of One's Own, and also I really like Virginia Woolf. I think she's a really great writer, so I'm excited to read these ones. And next we went to a bookstore called Pro QM, which is very close to the bookstore we went to before this. And this bookstore had a lot of niche books, I would say. It didn't have much popular fiction. It had books on like trance music and moments in art history and business philosophies. And it was quite interesting going through the bookstore and browsing through the books. It was a lot of like academic literature in this one. And the bookstore was also very quiet. I remember browsing through the shelves, and it didn't feel like it was in a city. It felt like a vacuum. There was no noise at all. The next bookstore we went to was this is one of my favourites. I love this one. It's called St. George's, and this bookstore has a mixture of new books and second-hand books, and this was the only bookstore we went to that had second-hand books. And they had a wide variety of genres: literary fiction, fantasy, poetry, plays, and also because some of the books were second-hand, they also had books that were quite reasonably priced. And I bought a book of poetry from this bookstore because I'd been wanting to buy a book of poetry on this bookstore tour, because at the moment I'm trying to write a poem every day in February, and I don't really own any poetry books. I usually just read poetry online, and so I wanted to buy like a poetry anthology so I could, flick through it and read poems when I felt like reading poems. And I found this book called The Faber Book of Love Poems, edited by James Fenton. And I think Faber are a great publisher in the UK, and I have owned one of their poetry books before. It was like a diary that from maybe like 2018 that had poems in it, which was really nice. And so I thought this would be a good book to read, and also I do love a good love poem, and it contains some poets that I really like as well, like Emily Dickinson and Thomas Hardy, and I think this was a good buy. And so then we went to the final bookstore, but before this we did something very important, and we went to a cafe. And there's this cafe I really like in Prenzlauer Berg called Cafe Anna Bloom, and it sells really good cakes and breakfasts and lunches and great hot chocolate. And I decided to have a chocolate cake there, Sour Torte, which I think is from Austria. And I think Sour Torte is made with like liqueur, and so the chocolate sponge is like kind of moist from the liqueur, and it's a very good cake. Then the final bookstore we went to is one that I have been to before, and it's called Love Story Berlin, and this is a really nice, cute bookstore. It has these little hearts around the bookstore where people have written comments about the book and recommending the book, and I think that's just a really nice touch that the bookstore has. And yeah, they have a wide range of books, and also these cute little knickknacks, book knickknacks, I suppose you could say, that you can also buy here. And then we finally finished the tour and headed back home again. And so if you ever find yourself in Berlin and you like reading, I would say this is a good route to do if you want to go to like some different bookstores in Berlin. And yes, that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will hope to see you in another video soon. Bye bye.